Thanks so much for joining me today, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Fabian. It's really a pleasure to be here.
I really appreciate you making time for this. Just to kick us off, would you mind giving me a little bit of context to your professional journey so far?
Yeah, sure, of course. So let's say the last 10 years I've spent in the automotive industry and mostly focusing on China. Let me also a little bit explain the history about it without being too long in my answer. The turning point came actually in 2014, because there I already anticipated that China will become one of the most influential players globally. And I actually just wanted to be part of it. So what I did, I quit my stable job, moved to China, first went to a university to study Chinese, and then as planned and as aimed, I luckily found a job in a consultancy. This consultancy was actually doing projects for the automotive industry, specifically for Volkswagen. And after roughly 1.5 years, I then moved to Volkswagen, spent there almost 6 years in Volkswagen Group China, was leading the group product marketing and strategy team. And after all these years in China, I was, of course, super curious to explore how is it possible that all those new EV players like Xiaopeng, like NIO, could challenge the real legacy players. So in 2021, I then joined XPENG or Xiaopeng in Chinese. First in China, then I later moved to Munich and I was helping them with the European market entry. And after 2 years, I then moved to NIO, and there I was leading the global digital go-to-market and also digital tech marketing. So basically, just in short, what drew me to the new players was, of course, speed, innovation, the bold mindset they are having. And yeah, I think all those topics will be, of course, part of our conversation, Fabian.
No, thank you so much. Sounds super fascinating. So somewhat similar to my journey where I just quit my stable job in Germany, moved abroad, not quite as far as you, just to the UK, to
Yeah,
do
but
my,
still.
my PhD and then and started working here. And yeah, which is sort of potentially a little bit of a theme throughout our conversation as well in terms of sort of all about adaptability and responding to change. But
Yeah.
to maybe set the scene when it comes to the sort of EV industry at the moment,
Mhm.
there is a lot of, I guess, hype around the sort of competitive landscape between some of the incumbents, some of the new entrants. I mean, even here, I live in quite a sort of historic town in England, and even here I see loads of BYDs, Lucids, etc. around.
Yes.
It's a little bit more of an affluent area, but still, it's sort of, I guess, indicative of some of the disruptions that we currently see. From your perspective, how profound, and you've worked with some of the incumbents as well, and then some of the new entrants. How profound is the current disruption, and how far ahead, if at all, are some of
Mhm.
the sort of new Chinese EV entrants in the BEV space?
Oh, that's a very good question. And I think we definitely have to distinguish here two areas. Let's say the first area, let's first look at China itself and then at the new incumbents coming also to Europe, because in my opinion, there's also a difference. So if we just look at China, um, my opinion, all the new incumbents are really, really far ahead. Whether it's Xiaopeng, whether it's NIO, whether it's BYD, so far ahead to the legacy brands. And the main reason for this is because of their innovation focus, and also they treat the product really like a digital product. So I also assume, of course, you and also the listeners have heard about SDV, so software defined vehicles. And in that case, the Chinese companies are really far ahead. So let's just take NIO as an example. As I said, I was working for NIO, responsible for the digital go-to-market, meaning launching digital products, in short, the operating system Banyan, bringing the new OTA updates into the car. So this is already an ability which legacy brands partially offer, but are not able to bring it at this level into the car as the Chinese EV players are doing. But this is really just the starting point. If we then look beyond the car, because this is also where the Chinese companies are having a really big advantage to the legacy brands. Let's take XPENG. They also focus on robotics. They also focus on flying cars. So looking really at this new EV players, and it's specifically also in China, they are far ahead because of the digital focus. Then let's take now the step to Europe. Of course, also these new EV players are coming now to Europe. We already have XPENG in the German market and also in the European market for sure. NIO is here, BYD, more companies about to come. And here we have, of course, a different landscape. It's not their home market, but still, in terms of digital product, well, in terms of what they are offering to the customer, I would even say also in Europe, it's far ahead to the traditional legacy brands. Battery swapping, also a very good example what NIO did, or NIO is still doing. I just read today, also a new battery swap station has been opened in Hamburg. So the infrastructure is evolving, and the Chinese EV brands are offering innovation to the customers where the customers are desperately looking for in legacy brands, in my opinion.
Mm. And why do you think that's the case? So why are they so far ahead? So from what you said, so a couple of points I highlighted, you said, okay, they're very innovation focused, they're really digital products focused. There was an element of, I'm not sure I completely so understood this right in terms of around vertical integration when it comes to some of the digital product creation. And then there's an element of just the absence of some of this legacy that some of the incumbents may sort on. And then the other week, I think I actually shared the link with you to this Financial Times so short documentary about Volkswagen, where they also showed, amongst others, this virtual voice assist in the vehicle from one of the NIO customers, and she provided her perspectives on that journey, which seems so far away from where some of the incumbents are.
Yes.
So why do you think that's the case? Is it an element that's more consumer driven? Is it more due to the lack of legacy and potentially cultural differences? Or is it sort of a mixture of the all of these factors in combination?
I would say in the end, it's a mixture, but the main driver is definitely the customer. The customer, let's first again focus on China, because the the new EV players are coming from China, and the advantage also to the legacy brands in China is they have a real, I always call it an ultra user-centric focus. And what does it mean? Of course, in China, the customer needs are different. The pain points are different. And in China, of course, the users and the customers are very much favored by all the digital landscape and technology, which is not only evolving in the auto industry, but industry-wide. And when it comes then to the auto industry, also the customers expect, just an easy example, the same product cycles, innovation cycles as the smartphone industry. And this is also where the new EV brands are providing what the customers is striving and looking for and demanding. So first, very much customer driven, looking for the needs. Can be an easy example. I was working in China for Chinese companies. During lunchtime, also employees like to take a small and a quick nap, because of course the days in China can be quite long. And offering a folding bed in the car is nothing out of the box in China. So it's something which the automakers are seeing as a desire from the EV customers, and they are just providing it. Just a very, very easy example. So this is, let's say, the customer focus. Then number two is definitely also the hyper competitive landscape, which we don't have here in Europe at this point of time, because in China there are many more EV brands, many, many more. So I would say easily above 150 brands in total in China. So which makes it, of course, some kind of a shark pool. So only those ones will survive who are most agile, who will offer the most differentiated features to the customers. So therefore, also the company itself, the new EV entrants, they are forced to come up with new innovations. And number three is definitely the mindset, which I also have experienced in NIO and also in XPENG. It's something like really nothing is impossible, or call it like think 10 times, not 10%. So what does it mean? I just mentioned the folding bed in the XPENG, the G9. NIO offers battery swapping. Li Auto offers big screens in the car. It's really like a cinema on wheels, but this is just inside the car. It's not limited to the car itself. As I already mentioned, XPENG, flying cars, robots. NIO, they have already their own in-house developed autonomous driving chip. They offer smartphones. And yeah. And number four, also very, very much important, because this is also a big difference to the legacy brands. Look at the founders of those companies. XPeng, so XPeng. The founder was previously founding a mobile internet company called UC Web. Then we have Lei Jun from Xiaomi. He basically started first in 2000, I think 2010, with an operating system. Then moved to the smartphone industry, then to consumer electronics, and now also offering cars. We have William Li from NIO, who actually founded BitAuto, which was at this time an online car sales platform, or Li Xian from Li Auto. He founded Autohome, which had its IPO in 2013, which is China's largest online car information platform. So all these factors combined makes the EV players so strong.
Mm. Just on that, where some of these new EV entrants seem to be more digitally native, and you also mentioned your work culture there. So, is the first of all, it may seem like you live off a random question, but do you feel like that individuals that work for these companies generally work harder compared to, and are sort of more driven compared to some of the incumbents, just when it comes to sort of the tenacity of pursuing goals, or do you think that's not really a major differentiating factor?
In some case, I think it's a differentiating factor. I also felt they are more dedicated to the mission and the vision of the company. Coming back again to companies are founded and the leadership and led by founders. So there is really another feeling, another culture. There is a real movement, and you can really feel the energy and the drive coming from the top, and then really on arriving on the working level. Working harder. I mean, here we also can distinguish. I think anyhow, the working times in China, whether you are working for an international company or a Chinese company, are both different to the working hours in Europe. But the working hours in a Chinese company in China is, of course, more intense, let's put it this way, than in an international company in China. For sure. Yeah. So there's always this saying Jojo Leo, which means 996, working from 9 to 9, 6 days, was established in the early days. So here you already can see that there is a different working culture. Yeah, absolutely. But my feeling is really, it's really also coming from the top. Yeah, there's a different, and also very important, a real digital mindset, which everyone is adapting towards too.
Yeah, just on that last point, that was sort of the second question I want to ask you around. Okay, a company that's sort of more digitally native, sort of founded
Mm.
and led by individuals that have worked with or founded other technology organizations. Do you
Yeah.
feel like how to what extent is this sort of ingrained in the organization? Is this more of a sort of focal point in terms of that they put more emphasis and resources behind some of the digital differentiators? Or is there also a capability advantage in sort of hiring for individuals that are more tech focused and across the organization a better understanding of the technology that's important right now?
Mm. Yeah, good point. And it's basically both. It's the focus and also it's the capabilities. Let's start with the focus. Um, Again, coming from China, Chinese customers have a high digital demand. So for sure, the focus of this new EV players is very much focused on digital features. Yeah, starting from in-house developed AD chips, as I just mentioned, or new features which are constantly being updated via OTA updates. So the focus is very, very much dedicated on the digital experience in the car, which the consumer already have learned and experienced in other industries, specifically in consumer electronics and smartphone. Then coming to the second point, to capability, fully agree. Because there is this different mindset of digital natives within the organization. Of course, the organization is also looking for talents coming from industries other than the automotive industries and other than, I call it, traditional engineering industries.
Mm.
I was working with game developers coming from software companies who were responsible for. I give you just an easy example. Navigation, 3D navigation in cars was developed by game developers, so who was previously working in the game industry. So this is totally different. You would never hire someone from the auto industry who was working on navigation systems in a legacy brand. So you bring really the digital natives who have experience with, in this case, the game industry.
Mm. What does it mean for the incumbents? The reason I ask this question is I've been to so many meetings and had so many
Mm,
conversations with board members or senior execs from the incumbents that basically started by um, saying something like, I'm not a technology guy. And this is
mm,
almost like a statement that you probably wouldn't hear at one of these companies that you alluded to. Do you
mm.
think, in terms of sort of major shifts we could or should see with the incumbents that are currently still, at least if we look at sort of global vehicle sales, still very prominent, but on the decline in many markets, or at least
Yeah.
um, some of the new entrants are capturing market share. What do you think would that need to mean to them in terms of talent, leadership, cultural change, etc.?
Yeah. Um, it's quite easy. Get the digital talents into the companies. Yeah. Don't be afraid of also hiring talents from other industries. Again, taking this example of the gaming industry. I'm not saying this is applicable to all departments, to all business units in the car industry, in a car company. For sure not. But in those areas where it really matters to become a software company, a tech company, a digital company, how you want to call it, it's so crucial first to have this mindset shift at the top that the focus now needs to be really emphasized on the digital part of the car. It's not only anymore about building a product which transport a customer from A to B. It's really now about building an entertainment environment. For sure, this is of course more explicit in China rather than in Europe. But my feeling is we will also see the demands which are already existing currently in China, we will also see within the next, it's hard to predict, but let's say maybe within the next 5 to 6 years, also swapping to Europe. That let's say OTA updates, new features, digital features in the car, whether it's in-car gaming, for instance, or as I mentioned, the big screens in the car. Those demands will evolve also in Europe, because also the car itself is transforming. So let's look 3 to 5 years ahead, and then let's look at autonomous driving. The car, how it's going to be built, needs to be absolutely different to what it is today. As I said, today you have someone behind the steering wheels driving from A to B, but in the future it will be an immersive, entertaining cabin. I still think that this will happen first in China rather than in Europe, but at one time also Europe will catch up, and the demands will also catch up.
Mhm. One of the massive recent technological advancements has been around the use of large language models, and so everyone is using large language model based solutions, whether it's an internal Microsoft Copilot for Enterprise, and then
Mhm.
various solutions across the entire value chain. Really, I was just wondering from your experience, are there differences in terms of how some of the incumbents experiment with Gen AI compared to some of the um, Chinese or generally new BEV entrants?
Mhm.
And yeah, let's maybe start there, and then I would be
Yeah,
really curious to delve into maybe some of these sort of promising use cases and future developments in that area as well.
yeah. Um, sure, there are differences. I would also say in the Chinese companies, when it comes to AI technology or technology in general, we also see now a shift to a lot of in-house development. So in-house development is increasing. I'm not saying that the Chinese companies are now developing their own AI system, but in some extent, in the back end, they are also having very, very smart and also very, very capable engineers behind. So it's not just a transfer of one existing solution to the car. But still, of course, they are using also AI tools and Gen AI tools from Baidu, from Alibaba, from DeepSeek. We also heard a lot about that. I have to be honest, I cannot recall all the car companies which are integrating DeepSeek, but it's quite a lot already in China because it's one of the most capable and most advanced Gen AI tool. And there's already a difference to the legacy brands who, yeah, of course, then reach out to OpenAI or Microsoft Azure to get also GPT technologies in the car. But I cannot tell for now because I haven't been for quite some time in a legacy brand. But I feel that the Chinese companies also try and successfully achieve some kind of collaboration with the AI providers to also have an own in-house system behind. Yeah.
Are there any? That's a really interesting point that I've thought about a lot recently, where even when it comes to these collaborations around Gen AI solutions, at
Mhm.
the basically all of the incumbents I speak with, they are very much sort of still in this traditional sort of master slave supplier relationship where
Mhm.
it's the OEM sort of determining what they need, and they have these sort of formal RFP processes, even when it comes to these types of solutions. And it's not really collaborative, even if some may claim it's a strategic partnership. Just usually just means it's a bigger contract, as far as
Mhm.
I'm aware. So of course don't know everything, but just in terms of how they approach these relationships, and it's always under this umbrella of the OEM. And if so, from what I potentially heard, I mean, this is my interpretation, that with some of the newer entrants in this space, it seems to be much more integrated and collaborative
Yeah.
in a way. Is it also your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as I said, it's more collaborative, more integrated. Um, and it's not limited to AI. Yeah. So for instance, also NIO started to develop their own autonomous driving chips,
Mm.
same as XPENG. Yeah. And this is something I think is a trend to also fulfill the idea of owning your own ecosystem, being less, being less, so that you are not driven or steered by third suppliers. Yeah, so to be really, you can decide on your own, and you can really decide and build and develop your own software ecosystem around it. Yes, and this is something which I don't see with the legacy brands.
Mm. If we look at the sort of experience that exists today, sort of most of the
Hmm.
incumbents use a form of Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, and then
Yeah.
some have sort of their own voice assists, which were usually terrible in terms of, especially for people like myself with an accent, and it usually never really worked. And now some of them start to experiment with sort of AI empowered agents for sort of very generic queries. So I don't know,
Mhm.
not that it would be overly useful, but if you just ask them about the weather or whatever. And then with some of the sort of new EV entrants, they seem to be more advanced when it comes to some of these LLM powered voice assists that then really already leverage some of the additional data points around maybe their calendars, their preferences when it comes to charging, maybe have access to their emails or messages and can respond to
Mhm.
things, maybe their sort of shopping carts or sort of maybe to Alibaba, etc., and can order things automatically. Um,
Mhm.
how far? So two questions there. I would be really curious to
Mhm.
get your perspective on. One, how far ahead do you generally think they are compared to some of the incumbents? Just based on, I mean, I also don't have sort of deeper insights into what some of them are working on right now, but just in terms of what's live in the market. And then secondly, how do you think that could evolve just from your experience with working with some of these players in terms of how quickly um, they may be able to progress?
You mean the legacy brands or the Chinese brands?
Both of them. So we know where
Both.
both of them
Yeah.
are. In terms of, okay, there seems to be a sort of slight advantage, at least when it comes to sort of deployments in China with Neo, for example, in terms of what they are offering right now. And the
Mhm.
incumbents, they aren't really there yet. There's sort of, in terms of what's live in the market, they're sort of maybe, I don't know, at least sort of 12 months behind by the
Mhm.
looks of it. I was just wondering, how do you think these sort of trajectories from there could evolve in terms of what features could be next, whether you think
Mhm.
the incumbents may catch up or whether the new EV entrants in terms of the sort of culture, tech advantages that they may have in some of these areas that they could potentially accelerate even further. And if so, what they could mean in terms of the types of features and functionalities and experiences that we could expect in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Then let's start with the very first question. So how far ahead are the EV players in terms of AI and also voice assistants? Um, Here I would also distinguish between two areas. The one area is China, and then and Europe, because there are differences. Naturally, because also of the language, of course, and everything. Let's say Xiaopi, so the AI voice assistant from Xiaopeng, or NOMI from Neo, is of course in that sense, when it comes to new features, to new innovation, firstly focused on the Chinese market and the Chinese customer. So therefore, the systems of those Chinese car brands are way more ahead than what the incumbents are providing, and also even further ahead what Chinese companies are offering in Europe. Um, Let me give you an example. Xiaopi from XPENG. Um, They for instance in China they have the capability, and this they launched quite early, also when I was already working for XPENG, having four passengers in the car. Everyone is talking at the same time to Xiaopi, to the AI voice assistant, and the voice assistant can really distinguish between the four different persons and can handle all the different actions which the passengers are requiring the AI voice assistant to do. So this is super impressive. I haven't seen anything like this in any legacy brand. Yeah, let's put it this way. And all those new features, which are already, of course, then available in China, whether it's Xiaopeng, Lixiang, or Neo, at one point of time, and I would not say that there will be a 100% transfer of the features coming to Europe. Most likely those features which, of course, also are desired and create value and benefit for the European customers. But for instance, what I just said about different occupants are talking to the AI voice assistant, and the voice assistant can distinguish between and then handle the actions differently, is something which might also come to Europe. Yeah? So in that saying, they are very, very far ahead. Then how will the future look like? Let's say first for the Chinese ones and then also for the legacy brands. Due to the fact that I always say that China is some kind of innovation lab, they test, try, fail, and iterate and try again. And at the end, something new, a big new innovation feature is coming up. So we will see the innovation speed improving in China with the Chinese companies, and then also specifically talking about AI voice assistants. Talking about the legacy brands, if they really want to catch up, I think the right way, and this is already being demonstrated by, let's here take an exact example with Volkswagen partnering with Xiaopeng on the G9 platform. I think this is the right way because, it's hard to say that the legacy brands will never catch up by themselves, but in a way, I would say the only way to really survive is cooperation and partnerships, getting the knowledge from Chinese brands like Xiaopeng on how to really develop a software-defined vehicle. I think we saw too many examples also in the news that have failed. I don't want to point at those failures, but I think what Volkswagen is now doing with Xiaopeng, bringing you two EVs I think in 2026, so basically next year, which I think is already a very, very short time frame in terms of product development, which already gives the right direction that Volkswagen might be able to provide something for the Chinese customer that is actually really providing what the customer is desiring in China.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good segue to my final question. And if we look ahead over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, there are lots of possible scenarios in terms of how the global automotive landscape will evolve, and no one has a crystal ball, but know for sure. But what is sort of what do you think is the most likely scenario in terms of sort of the global evolution, in terms of the types of players that we will see, in terms of the types of collaboration, also in terms of who's capturing more market share, as arguably we will see more BEV vehicles everywhere?
Mm. Yeah. So first of all, let's take again what I mentioned earlier. In the EV industry in general, I see it as a shark pool. So many EV players, so hard and so intense competition, and for sure not everyone can survive. I think that's just to be realistic. So looking 5-10 years ahead, we will definitely see a significant consolidation. I'm 100% sure of it. But it might be just too early to really predict who in the end will survive. We have, of course, the Chinese companies, then we have the international companies. But then also within the Chinese companies, we have the first EV players. I call them the first EV players. And now we have the second wave, the new challengers. So let's say the first EV players is something like BYD, NIO, Xiaopeng, Lixiang, and so on. But the new wave is now Huawei, Xiaomi. So basically companies who have their origin in another industry, like Xiaomi or Huawei in the smartphone industry, and now also challenging even the first EV players in China. So it's really, really hard to say who in the end will survive. And if we look also historically, I mean, really looking at what happened in the United States, for instance, in 2020 and 1925, where we had, I think, 170, 180 brands, then dropped to 70 brands. And by 1955, we only had some big players in the United States. The big players who also then, of course, were very successful in the international markets. So there was over 2 decades a very, very rough and severe consolidation. And now I see this is also now happening to the EV industry. So maybe in 5 to 10 years, we will only talk about 8 to 10 big players potentially. My feeling is the majority of them will be Chinese. Not all of the international brands will survive. Could be even not within the next 5 years, also 10 years. It's really hard to predict, but my feeling is very hard consolidation, and the majority will be driven by Chinese players.
Thank you so much for your time today, Daniel. That's been super insightful and fascinating. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fam. It was really, really good discussion and very, very insightful questions. Also to recap for myself. Yeah, as I said, yeah, having been also in the Chinese market now for so long, and it's even now so exciting to see what is happening in the market day by day, because there is really happening a lot, specifically in China. So every day is like a new feature, new innovation, even a new brand is popping up.